We were brothers. He stabbed me in the back for 10 million naira. The call came at 11:47 on a Wednesday night. Not from a stranger, not from an enemy, not from anyone I had ever had reason to distrust. From Emeka, my brother. Not by blood, by something thicker than blood. By 15 years of shared struggle, shared hunger, shared dreams whispered across a small room in a boys' quarters in Lagos when we were both 22 and had nothing but each other and the absolute unshakable certainty that we would make it. He called me at 11:47 on a Wednesday night, and the first thing he said was, "I need you to know I am sorry." I said, "Sorry for what?" He said, "I already signed." 3 words, I already signed. And in those 3 words, my entire world shifted on its axis, because I knew exactly what he had signed. He had signed away the contract, the one we had spent 2 years building toward, the one with Alhaji Musa's construction company that was worth 10 million naira to us, split equally, 5 million each, enough to finally move us from surviving to something that looked like living. He had signed it, alone, in his name only, and the money, all 10 million naira of it, had gone into an account I had never seen and had never been told about. I stood in my kitchen at 11:47 on a Wednesday night with my phone pressed to my ear, and I felt something happen in my chest that I do not have a clean word for. Not anger, not yet. Something older than anger, something colder. The particular feeling of a man who has just understood that the ground he was standing on was never as solid as he thought. And then he said, "You have to understand why." And I said nothing, because there are moments when silence is the only honest thing left. This is that story. Emeka Okafor came into my life the way the best people do. Not at the right time, not at a convenient moment, at the worst possible time, when I needed him and did not know I needed him and would not have admitted it if you had asked me. I was 22 years old and 3 months into Lagos and already losing. I had come from Enugu with a degree in civil engineering, 40,000 naira, and the particular confidence of a young man who has never yet discovered the specific ways the world will choose to humble him. I had a contact, a distant uncle's friend who had promised work. The contact disappeared within 2 weeks. The 40,000 naira followed shortly after. I was sleeping on the floor of a room in Mushin I shared with 4 other men when Emeka arrived. He had come from Imo State, same degree. His was in quantity surveying, same story, a contact that evaporated, money that followed. He arrived at the room with a bag and a smile that was bigger than his circumstances had any right to produce, and the first thing he said to me was, "I look like a man who knows where the cheapest eba in this area is." I said, "Follow me." We ate together that evening for the first time. We were still eating together 15 years later. Those 15 years were not easy years. We hustled in the way that young men with good qualifications and no connections hustle in Lagos, taking every small job, every contract, every opportunity that presented itself, regardless of how far below our abilities it sat. We did quantity surveying work for small contractors who paid us half of what they promised and late. We drew up plans for building projects that other people took credit for. We worked 14-hour days for men who drove cars that cost more than either of us would earn in 5 years and treated us like furniture. But we built, slowly, painfully, year by year. We registered a company together, Okafor and Adeyemi Construction Consulting. We opened a joint account. We made a rule. Every contract that came through either of us went through the company, split equally, no exceptions. No exceptions. We shook hands on it. Not a legal document, not a lawyer, a handshake in a small office in Yaba that we had rented together and that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. A handshake between brothers. That was enough. Or so I believed. In the 13th year of our partnership, I met Alhaji Musa Abdullahi. He was a developer, old money from Kano, expanding into Lagos with serious construction projects. He had heard of us, specifically of work we had done on a residential development in Lekki that had come in under budget and ahead of schedule, which in Lagos construction is roughly equivalent to performing a miracle. He invited us to his office in Victoria Island. We went together. We sat across from him in a room that cost more to furnish than our first year of revenue, and we presented our company, what we had built, what we could do, what we believed the next phase of Lagos real estate development needed. Alhaji Musa listened. He was a man of few words and careful eyes. He asked 3 questions. He looked at our portfolio for exactly 7 minutes. Then he said, "I want to use you for the Banana Island project. Quantity surveying, project management, the full scope. The contract value is 10 million naira. 10 million. We had never been anywhere near that number. Emeka and I sat in the car afterwards, and neither of us spoke for 5 minutes. Then Emeka laughed. That big laugh, the one I had known since Mushin, the one that was bigger than his circumstances had any right to produce. And he said, "We are going to be rich, brother." And I believed him. I had always believed him. That was the problem. The betrayal. The contract negotiation took 2 months. During those 2 months, everything appeared normal. Emeka handled the communication with Alhaji Musa's office. This was not unusual. Emeka had always been the front-facing one, the one who talked to clients, who made rooms, who made people feel that working with us was not just a business decision, but a relationship. I handled the technical work, the numbers, the planning. We had divided our roles organically over 15 years, and it had always worked. I noticed small things. Meetings with Alhaji Musa's team that Emeka attended alone, which he explained as quick informal sessions not worth pulling me across town for. Phone calls he took in the other room, a slight new distance in his manner when the contract came up, a change in subject, a shortening of the conversation. I noticed. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself this was Emeka, my Emeka, the man who had lent me money for food in the 2nd month in Lagos when I was too proud to ask, the man who had sat with me in a hospital corridor for 6 hours when my mother was in surgery and said nothing because he knew nothing needed to be said, the man who had turned down a higher-paying job offer in our 9th year because, his words exactly, "I am not going anywhere without you." I told myself I was paranoid. I was not paranoid. What I did not know, what I would not know until 11:47 on that Wednesday night, was that 6 weeks into the negotiation, Alhaji Musa's office had raised a concern. They had looked at our company registration more carefully. They had noticed that our company structure registered gave each of us equal signing authority, meaning either partner could enter contracts independently, a standard provision we had included at formation and never thought about again. Someone in Alhaji Musa's legal team had flagged this as a risk. They wanted to contract with a single named individual, simpler, cleaner, one point of accountability. They had told this to Emeka, and Emeka had said, "Use my name." Not, "Let me discuss this with my partner." Not, "We need to restructure the agreement to protect both of us." Use my name. And then he had said nothing to me. For 6 weeks he had known. He sat across from me at lunch. He took my calls about the project timeline. He smiled that big smile and said, "We are going to be rich, brother." And he knew. The contract was signed on a Tuesday. The end 10 million naira landed in his personal account on a Wednesday morning. He called me Wednesday night. I already signed. I have thought about that call many times since then. I have thought about why he called at all. He could have disappeared. He could have avoided me for weeks, months, used the money to relocate, build a wall of distance and lawyers and new circumstances between us. Men have done worse, but he called. And I have come to understand, not to forgive, maybe not ever, but to understand that he called because some part of him, underneath everything he had become in those 6 weeks of secret keeping, was still the man from Mushin who ate eba with me that first evening. That man could not disappear without saying, "I am sorry," even if the sorry was too small for the size of what he had done. I already signed. I said, "How long did you know?" He said, 6 weeks. I said, 6 weeks. I said nothing else, and I hung up the phone. I did not call a lawyer that night. I did not call anyone that night. I sat in my kitchen until 3 a.m. and I did something that surprised me, even me. I thought about 15 years. I laid them out in my mind like a surveyor lays out a site, carefully, methodically, looking at every detail. I thought about everything Emeka had given me and everything he had taken. I thought about what a court case would cost, not just in money, but in time and energy, and the particular exhaustion of fighting someone who knows everything about you. I thought about the joint company account, which had a balance of 340,000 naira, money we had I thought about 15 years. I laid them out in my mind like a surveyor lays out a site, carefully, methodically, looking at every detail. I thought about everything Emeka had given me and everything he had taken. I thought about what a court case would cost, not just in money, but in time and energy, and the particular exhaustion of fighting someone who knows everything about you. I thought about the joint company account, which had a balance of 340,000 naira, money we had both put in over the years. I thought about the contracts we currently had running, 3 smaller jobs that we had signed together that were now legally complicated in ways I had not yet worked out. I thought about the handshake in the Yaba office. No exceptions. I thought about that for a long time. Then I went to bed. In the morning, I did 4 things. First, I called our company's bank and had my signing authority frozen on the joint account. Not emptied, frozen, so nothing could move in or out without both of us. Second, I called each of the 3 existing clients and informed them, calmly and professionally, that there had been a change in the company structure and that all future communication should come through me directly. I gave them no details, I gave them no drama. I gave them a new point of contact and complete reassurance that their projects would be completed on time and on budget. Third, I called a lawyer, not to file anything yet, to understand exactly what my position was and what it was not, to know the ground I was standing on before I took a single step. Fourth, I did not call Emeka back. For 31 days, I did not call Emeka back. He called me 14 times in those 31 days. I watched his name appear on my screen 14 times, and I did not answer. Not out of rage, not out of grief, out of strategy. Because I had learned something sitting in that kitchen at 3 a.m. The man who reacts immediately, who storms and threatens and demands, tells his opponent everything. He shows where the wounds are. He shows what he values. He shows how much he has lost his footing. And I had not lost my footing. I had lost a partner. That was different. In those 31 days, I quietly moved all ongoing project documentation into my personal files. I documented every contribution I had made to the company over 15 years, every contract, every technical deliverable, every client relationship that had been built on my work. I put together a file so comprehensive that any court, any arbitrator, any third party looking at it would understand within 30 minutes that Okafor and Adeyemi Construction Consulting was as much mine as his, arguably more.
And on the 32nd day, I called Alhaji Musa directly. Not about the money, not to complain, not to tell him what Emeka had done, to introduce myself. I said, Alhaji, my name is Chidi Adeyemi. I am the co-founder of Okafor and Adeyemi Construction Consulting. I understand you recently signed a contract for the Banana Island project. I want to introduce myself as the lead technical director on that project and to assure you personally that the work will meet every standard we presented in our proposal. Alhaji Musa was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I heard there may have been some internal disagreement. I said, there has been a change in the company structure. I wanted you to hear from me directly that it will not affect your project in any way. He said, come to my office on Friday. I went to his office on Friday. The reckoning. I sat across from Alhaji Musa in that same Victoria Island office. He was a man of few words and careful eyes. He looked at me for a long time before he spoke. Then he said, tell me what happened. I told him, not emotionally, not with pleading or bitterness. I laid it out the way I laid out a project, the facts, the timeline, the structure, what had been agreed, what had been done instead, what I had done in the 31 days since. Alhaji Musa listened without interrupting. When he finished, he was quiet for a very long time. Then he said, the contract is signed. I cannot undo it. That is not how business works. I said, I understand. He said, but the work on the Banana Island project has not yet started, and the work, the actual technical work, is what I am paying for. I said, yes. He said, and you were telling me that you are the one who does the technical work. I said, I am. He looked at me. He said, there is a second project, Ikoyi, larger than Banana Island. It will go to tender in 3 months. I was going to offer it to the same firm. He let that sentence sit in the air between us. I said nothing. He said, bring me a proposal. Your name on it this time. I brought him a proposal. He gave me the Ikoyi project, 17 million naira, in my name. The legal case against Emeka took 8 months. It was not clean, it was not quick. But the documentation I had built in those 31 days of silence made the outcome clear enough that his lawyer advised him to settle rather than fight. He returned 4.2 million, not the full 5 that was mine, not with interest, not with anything that fully accounted for what had been taken, but enough to matter, enough to close the account. I did not celebrate when the settlement came through. I sat with it for a while. Then I moved on. The lesson. People ask me sometimes if I miss him. Emeka, the man from Mushin, the man with the big laugh, the man who sat with me for 6 hours in a hospital corridor and said nothing because he knew nothing needed to be said. And the honest answer is, yes. I miss the man I thought he was. I miss the version of our story that I believed we were living. But here's what 15 years and a 10 million naira betrayal taught me that no business school and no mentor and no successful year could have taught me any other way. Trust is not built on history. History tells you who a person has been. It tells you nothing about who they will be when the number is large enough and the opportunity is quiet enough and the voice in their chest that whispers more gets loud enough. The man who betrayed me was not the different man that I knew. He was the same man, with the same hunger, the same ambition, the same restless need for more that had driven us both from the beginning. The difference was that when the moment came, he fed it, and I did not. Not because I am better, not because I am stronger, but because somewhere in me, the handshake still meant something. No exceptions. That's the thing about betrayal that the stories don't always tell you. It is not the enemy who breaks you. It is never the enemy. It is the person who knows exactly where you are standing and how much weight you can hold, and decides in one quiet moment that their 5 million is worth your 15 years. That person will always be someone you trusted. That's what makes it betrayal and not just theft. I changed the company name after the settlement. Just Adeyemi Consulting now. One name on the door, one set of hands on the work. I still eat eba sometimes, and I still think of that first evening in Mushin when a man with a bigger smile than his circumstances arrived at my door and said, "Follow me." I follow no one now, but I remember how it felt to believe I could. And I use that memory not as a wound, as a compass.